now that we see that the transfer portal is starting to die down a little bit, what I really wanted to take the opportunity to do is I really wanted to take a look at least early on, who are the winners and losers of the transfer portal. Now, before I get into this, I do want to acknowledge Ohio State as well as the Boise State Broncos. Boise State, listen, we know that Boise State, brought some pretty good names in through the transfer portal. We all know this to be a thing. Boise State is going to be a popular pick. They really will. They will absolutely be a popular pick in terms of not only winning the Mountain West, they're defending champions of the Mountain West after all, but also secondarily, now that we have this 12-team playoff, there is the distinct possibility as well that we see Boise State make it to the college football playoff. Because all they have to do, especially if they stick with the 6-6, so like we go to a 5-7, if you're the best group of 5 champion, you're automatically in this college football playoff. So there's some room for Boise State to operate. I think they're going to be a popular pick to not only win the Mountain West, but also win a chance to go to the college football playoff. I think those are in the cards. And then, of course, Ohio State. Ohio State, I want to acknowledge them as well. They signed some big-time players. While they only ended up signing 7 separate players in the portal, they got some dudes in this transfer portal. Julian Sains going to be a quarterback in the future. Caleb Downs, freshman All-American. He's coming to Ohio State. Quinshon Judkins, the running back from Ole Miss, coming. Seth McClellan, interior offensive lineman that started in the semifinals of the national championship game. He's coming to the Buckeyes. And then they have their quarterback for right now in Will Howard coming to Ohio State. So Ohio State, they loaded up in this transfer portal. They saw Michigan win a national championship one time. It's like, all right, that's enough. So I did want to mention those two teams real quickly, but I didn't want to lump them into that winners category because it does feel like a little bit of a cop-out. I wanted to take this time to really look more towards teams that maybe aren't as talked about necessarily, but taking into account what they also lost in the transfer portal, I thought they also did a pretty good job. So with that being said, let's go ahead. Let's jump into the winners and losers of the transfer portal. And I love winners. You love winners. We all love winners, baby. So we're going to talk about those winners first. And let's talk about a team that, according to the On-Free transfer portal interface, this team is currently the #1 recruiting class in the transfer portal when also accounting for people that are leaving the program. And that is the Louisville Cardinals. Now, the Louisville Cardinals, they added some blue chip guys. They ended up adding 8 total blue chip guys in this transfer portal. They also ended up adding 16 free stars. They generally, not only did they bring more people in than Louisville had leaving the program, but the average player that is coming into the program through the transfer portal is better than the players that are ultimately leaving. So while it may not reflect in your record is not always what it says you are. And that's really evident in how schedules are made up. Louisville's going to have a tougher schedule in 2024. That will happen. But even though their schedule might be tougher and they might have a lesser record because of that, this might be an even better team than last year. Because, man, they brought in some pretty good players through this transfer portal. Tyler Barron, for example, really good edge rusher out of Tennessee, was a Knoxville, Tennessee kid. He's coming to play for Louisville his last year in college football, most likely. He's a 2020 recruit. In other news, Dave McCullough from Oklahoma, he's coming over as well. Panay Boone had a big-time season at Toledo. He was tearing it up in the MAC. He's coming to Louisville now. Panay Boone's going to be a huge add to that Louisville backfield moving forward. You also have guys like Monroe Mills, an offensive tackle, because you got to have some good offensive linemen. You can never have too many good offensive linemen. Absolutely not. Got to have some good offensive linemen for sure. Colin Lacey, wide receiver. They got some weapons now. They add some weapons. Colin Lacey, Don Shaney Jr. out of Miami. It's going to be a sneaky good team, man. It's going to be a sneaky good team. And that's not even mentioning, guys like Jordan Garrard, Corey Forden out of FIU and UCF, respectively. That's big. You'll love to see that. And yeah, it's just and Ford Griffith, which great name, by the way. Ford Griffith was a 0-star recruit. Ford Griffith is now considered a 4-star after being adjusted for a transfer portal. He's a Harvard grad, and he's out here playing his last year at Louisville. Oh, and not to mention probably the most important of all, Tyler Shaw. So they'll have an established quarterback. Got him from Texas Tech. This is a great class. This is a great recruiting class, and I can see why Louisville has that #1 team in the country when it comes to the transfer portal. Now, they're obviously not the only team that has been busy in the transfer portal as well. They are not too far behind them. We know Deion Sanders. He's a huge fan of that transfer portal. The Colorado Buffaloes, which, by the way, Colorado primarily recruits his players through the transfer portal. He doesn't really mess with high school recruiting that much, which I understand the why. Why take a risk on a 17, 18-year-old kid when you can get players that have experience handling the rigorous preparation that is required to play college football at a high level? So I wholeheartedly get it, by all means. That being said, Colorado right now has got the #2 class, according to On3, best recruiting class in the Big 12. Colorado also doing a nice job loading up here yet again. They're getting better as a roster. They're going to be better. Now, Colorado is going to have a difficult schedule in the Big 12. They're going to play the top 5 odds makers for being a Big 12 champion. So, not a guarantee that Colorado is going to go to a bowl game. Not saying that at all, but Colorado is going to get better. Issue that Colorado had was in the trenches. And oh, baby, did they work those trenches pretty well. Just looking at the line talent. BJ Green, a 2021 commit to Arizona State. He's coming to Colorado. He was a bright spot for what was a really egregious Arizona State squad. They also managed to pick up Philip Houston out of FIU. Chidie Nwankwo, a defensive lineman out of Houston. Samuel Akula from Pittsburgh. That's a hard-nosed town. That's a hard-nosed town right there. In addition, you got Anquan Barnes coming from Alabama. You also have Quincy Wiggins, the LSU transfer, coming in, playing edge. Keaton Wade playing edge. He comes from Kentucky. Kalen Benson from Indiana. Justin Myers from UTEP. So they really did a very good job of getting some reinforcements in the trenches because, yeah, they really needed that trench help for sure. But that's not the only adds on this Colorado roster. They also managed to pick up LaJohntay Wester of Florida Atlantic. He's considered a 4-star kid. Played pretty well for the Owls this year. In addition, you also have some other players like Preston Hodge. Preston Hodge was a pivotal player for that Liberty defense. Went undefeated, win Conference USA. Preston Hodge really cashing in on that. He's playing for Colorado, and he's going to work with what arguably one of the best CBs to ever do it. Oh, that's going to be just an oh-so-special combination right there. Also getting better with those skill guys so that, hey, Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, they don't got to do everything on offense. Will Shepard, proven player at Vanderbilt, very proven player. He's got 1 year of college football remaining, going to Colorado. He can certainly play. And yeah, this Colorado team, they might not be, it might not reflect in the record, but Colorado going to be a fun team to watch, like they were this past year. They're going to be a fun team to watch. Now, let's talk about another winner, the Ole Miss Rebels. Ole Miss got number 3, and they loaded up on some 5-star kids. They end up signing 5 blue chip guys out of the transfer portal. While they didn't bring as many transfers as Louisville and Colorado, they arguably signed one of the better transfer classes just from a standpoint of just the average quality of player. It's up there with a Texas. It's up there with a, say, Ohio State as well. Ole Miss, while they did not manage to go ahead and sign a ton of people, they signed a couple of blue chippers for sure. Yam Banks, for example, out of South Alabama. I'm really excited for that kid. Yam Banks. We talked about him a couple of podcasts ago. Yam Banks is a dude, man. He is an absolute dude. Very excited to see what he can do in the SEC next year. I'm really pumped to see him get more attention, and rightfully so. He's not the only person of note. They also got some reinforcements in the trenches. Diego Pounds from North Carolina. He's a 4-star kid playing offensive tackle. Really trying to reinforce those trenches. Got that Julius Barlow as well. We just finished talking about. And of course, you got Walter Nolen, 5-star kid out of Texas A&M, part of that extremely electric 2022 class. Didn't pan out for Texas A&M at all, but hey, Walter Nolen can play, man. Walter Nolen can absolutely play in the SEC, getting a chance to do so at Ole Miss. Also, one of the better names that I've seen here, Juice Wells. Juice Wells has one more chance at college football. He's a 2019 class of 2019 kid. Bright spot on that South Carolina team. South Carolina they had a rough year, but not Juice Wells. He's got the juice, and he's going to add that juice to that Ole Miss offense this year. And Princely Umanie of Florida, he's coming to Ole Miss as well. He's a transfer from the Florida Gators, a former 4-star kid that's going to be playing at the edge. So some very good pickups here for the Ole Miss Rebels, and rightfully so. And that takes us to probably the biggest winner of or one of the bigger winners. I won't say big winner, because you thought Ole Miss transfer haul was good. Oregon, they got some dudes too. Oregon, and here's the thing with Oregon, right? Oregon not only ended up signing their quarterback of today, they also signed their quarterback of the future as well. They signed Dillon Gabriel in the transfer portal, played at UCF, was at Oklahoma, and now he's here at Oregon. And while Bo Nix is going to go to the NFL and deserves that NFL opportunity, Dillon Gabriel going to Oregon is going to make Oregon a title contender, because when we talk about guys and we're talking about making our early season predictions, one of the factors that I consider is having a quarterback that has experience starting. And Dillon Gabriel has that, but he's not the only quarterback with starting experience. Dante Moore was a true freshman at UCLA. He's coming as well. So there'll probably be a battle between Dillon Gabriel and Dante Moore. Dillon Gabriel will likely win it, but Dante Moore could be the quarterback of the future for the Oregon Ducks. And what that does is that it keeps Oregon a realistic contender for years to come with those two moves alone. But of course, it's not always about the quarterbacks now, is it? Because, oh baby, they got some help on the defensive side of the ball, and some big-time receiver, and a big-time receiver too. Actually, a couple of really good corners. Jabbar Muhammad out of Washington. He goes to the rival Oregon. I'm sure Washington is they're not really feeling that, but hey, it is what it is at this point. And then on the opposite end, Cam Alexander. Dude was a star at UTSA. He really popped out at his time at UTSA. So two really good corners. Not to mention they also pick up Jamari Caldwell out of Houston as well. Some extra help on that defensive side of the football. And hey, a little bit of sprinkles in there. How about a former 5-star plus in Evan Stewart from Texas A&M coming to Oregon as well? Gotta have somebody to throw the ball to, and hey, maybe Evan Stewart can emerge as that guy, as he's only a class of 2022 kids, so he has at least 2, maybe 3 years of eligibility. So really like the pickups for the Oregon Ducks. And finally, the last winner, and specifically, I like to give a little bit of love to the folks over in the group of 5. We don't forget about the group of 5 over on this channel by any means. UNLV, man. UNLV, I think it's going to be a little bit of a surprise because UNLV had their starting quarterback transfer out, Jaden Maliva. He's going to USC. But other than that, they didn't really lose anyone of note. Now, losing Jaden Maliva is going to suck. It's not fun to lose that type of calendar player. But UNLV, they still have the best transfer class of the group of 5. And they bring in some talent, man. They do have a little bit of talent coming in. Tony Grimes, corner at Texas A&M, didn't play much at Texas A&M, but was a former 5-star. So hey, listen, Tony Grimes might have something in the tank. And Antonio Doyle is a edge rusher from Jackson State. Was a 4-star recruit in high school, and of course, you got Michael Allen, a running back out of NC State. Could be starting for UNLV here in this upcoming season. So getting multiple starters in your transfer portal class from Power 5 schools, mind you, UNLV is going to be fine. I think they're going to be okay moving forward, even with the loss of Jaden Maiva. And they still have their head coach, by the way, which is also a big plus. He was expected to leave. Could still happen. College football is a crazy, crazy world. But for now, it's got some continuity at UNLV, and hey, maybe they can make a run at that Mountain West title as well. A little bit of a dark horse, dare I say. But now, the not so fun part. I like talking about the winners first because they get me in such a good mood. They really do. But now we gotta talk about some programs that are taking some L's. They're taking some L's early on in the transfer portal. Now, what I will say is that we'll still have spring ball, and I'm sure there's going to be more people entering the transfer portal after the spring ball season. But right now, these are the losers that I'm looking at. I think Troy is one, staying on that group of 5 theme. Troy having a lot more talent entering than leaving right now. They had 16 people leave the transfer portal. They only managed to get 6 guys in on their own. 3 of them are from Power 5 schools, but none of the 6 players that they brought in were really of note, to be honest with you. And also, Troy right now there are FCS programs that have better transfer portal classes than Troy. I'm not joking. Don't take my word for it. Go check on the 247 website. You'll see there's an FCS program or 2 that has a better they have a better transfer portal class than what Troy does right now. So I would not be surprised if Troy takes a step in the wrong direction, and that's a shame because Troy, they won the Sun Belt. They actually won the Sun Belt. This is a good program, but hey, that's just the business of college football sometimes. Would not be surprised to see Troy take a step back. Speaking of teams that are going to disappoint me to my core when it comes to transfer portal, Clemson. Clemson is a loser in this transfer portal, at least as of so far. Now, when I think of Clemson, Clemson is a really good program. I remember vividly Clemson winning national championships. Actually won multiple national championships. And this was in the middle of Nick Saban arguably in his prime. But seeing what's going on at Clemson, we saw what happened this year at 8-4, and really what the difference is of the Clemson of today and the Clemson of the early to mid 2010s. They don't have elite playmakers on the outside. That's the biggest thing holding Clemson back. And it's been well documented at this point. Dabo's leaving for whatever reason, just not really embraced the transfer portal, or not even embrace it. He's not even using it. He hardly used it last year, because last year he brought in one person, a backup quarterback, or he ended up being a backup quarterback. That's it. So they brought in one transfer last year. And so at this point, if you're Dabo Swinney, you would think that if you want to continue to be at or near the top, you got to at least use the transfer portal. And yet here we are, February 2nd. Transfer portal's been open for a while, couple months at least. And Clemson has not bring in a single person again. Clemson had a disappointing season by their standards. Yes, they were close to 10 wins. They ended up going, I believe, 9-4. But if 8-4 and 9-4 is the new standard, this is the type of results that come from it. Or at least that indicator that you're okay with 8-4, that you're okay with 9-4, not using the tools at your disposal to try to make your team better. And Clemson lost a couple of pretty good players in this transfer portal as well. Andrew Mabuka, he's going to Texas. He played safety for the Clemson Tigers. Toriano Pride was another corner. That's another bigger loss for the Clemson Tigers. They're going to Missouri, another Tiger team. So difficult questions might need to be asked there if you're at Clemson. If they don't use the transfer portal and they go 8-4, 9-4 again, I don't know what you would do. I'm not saying fire Dabo. I think he's earned the right to stay as long as he wants because he did win a national championship. And that is an incredibly hard thing to do. But and it would be different as well if they were recruiting at an elite level. But they're not. It's not bad. It's not even bad. But Clemson, they're recruiting at a very good level, but it's not at an elite level. You know what I'm saying? They're 11th right now in recruiting. So you would think if they were not using the transfer portal at all, you would think that they would be closer to his top 5, and that's just not happening. They're 11th overall when it comes to recruiting, but if you take a holistic picture, when you account for the transfer portal as well, they're just 15th. They're behind teams like a Florida State that just won the ACC. They're behind Miami, who, yes, Miami also had its fair share of struggles, but Miami's coming. They're coming for your crown. And so you worry about Clemson possibly falling back to a era of where they're good, but they're not in conversation for national championships like they have been in the 2010s and recently in the early 2020s. They've made the playoffs, the college football playoff, in this decade so far. So hopefully they get it right and they actually use the transfer portal, but they're running out of players to actually get right now. We'll see if they're more aggressive when it comes to the spring portal opening up. Couple other losers. Iowa State, I think, is another one. They have the worst transfer class in the Big 12 right now. Didn't bring anybody of note in the transfer portal. They only brought in 4 players. That is it. They have brought in 4 players, and they also lose Greg Gaines. Greg Gaines going to Rhode Island, of all places. Going to Rhode Island, former 4-star player. leaving Iowa State to go to Rhode Island. A lot more guys that are entering the transfer portal for Iowa State than coming in. They had 14 outgoing transfers. Iowa State had just 4. So Iowa State could be vulnerable not to take a step back because they are going to get the majority of their starters back. They're going to have 20 of 22 starters. So I won't even say that it's going to be a step back, but you wonder about the proven ability of the depth that is behind the starters. And when you're trying to compete for, if you want to compete for conference championships, you want to compete for the college football playoff, and for a handful of teams compete for a national championship. Because as we highlighted in our way too early 2024 predictions, winning a national championship is probably only realistic for 10 to 15 schools going into this season. It's just the nature of the beast. If you want to do those things, you got to have depth. You can't just have a good starting lineup. You got to have a solidified second string as well, a 2 deep, so to speak, to where if the starter goes down, there's not as much of a gap between the starter and the backup. And football season is always a grind too. It certainly is a grind. There's no question about that either. So when you're trying to ensure that you have 40-ish quality players on your roster, having a incoming to outgoing ratio of -10 is not the way to go about it. So Iowa State, I'm not saying they're going to regress going into 2024, but having them progress might be a different story. They might stagnate a little bit this upcoming season if they don't change their ways in the transfer portal. How about Northwestern? Now, Northwestern has an excuse. Northwestern does have higher academic standards. It has seen, so Northwestern has a harder time bringing players in through the transfer portal because those academic requirements. It's what a Stanford has to deal with out west. And then if you want to look out east, Vanderbilt, Duke, Boston College also has to deal with those things as well. So Northwestern has not brought in a single transfer yet either. Now, Northwestern hasn't lost anyone of note in the transfer portal. They only lost 8 guys, but it's a little bit of disappointment because they brought in more. They did more in the transfer portal last year. They brought in Ben Bryant, who ended up being the starting quarterback for Northwestern. They brought in a few players as well. So Northwestern can bring players in the transfer portal, but at the same time, this year, for whatever reason, they just haven't decided not to do that yet. They haven't done it. You hate to see it, especially with what we got going on with how they're recruiting at the present moment, right? Because Northwestern right now is recruiting. They are at the bottom overall. Out of 18 teams, they are 18th in the Big Ten, and it's not even close. It's not. It's not even close. So Northwestern, if you're going to be relevant in this new era of Big Ten football, because remember, guys, the Big Ten West is gone. So Northwestern's schedule is going to get harder now that they don't have more navigatable games in the middle of conference season. And then depending on how things break with like the Big Ten East and back then, that was a different story. But yeah, tough look for Northwestern right now, not bringing in a single transfer. And then finally, LSU. Honestly, I've been pretty disappointed with the LSU Tigers here in the portal campaign. They lost a significant amount of talent in this transfer portal. I don't think people realize that. Let me give you a list of the blue chip players that are leaving their roster. Logan Diggs, going to Ole Miss. Lance Hurt, former 5-star kid, by the way, going to Tennessee. Jalen Brown, Florida State. Denver Harris hasn't decided yet, but he's a 4-star kid. Even in transfer portal standards. You also have Quincy Liggins going to Colorado. Talked about that a little bit earlier. And Bryce Langston, defensive lineman, he's in that transfer portal as well. Hasn't made a decision as of yet. And yet, total of 17 players leaving the transfer portal for the LSU Tigers. Now, it's not all bad. They did bring in a few good players, right? They brought in CJ Daniels. He was a wide receiver at Liberty, was a top target for Caden Salter. So CJ Daniels will come in and possibly make an impact. They also brought in Savion Thomas on the other side. He was a wide receiver at Mississippi State. And probably the biggest portal ad that they could get is Jordan Gilbert, a four-star safety out of Texas A&M. They brought him in through the portal. Now, big reason why LSU was not in that college football playoff SEC championship, I had LSU winning the SEC, and I was wrong. Admittedly, I was wrong. But a big reason why I was wrong was because the defense was atrocious. And unfortunately, I just don't think that they did enough to really solidify themselves more defensively. Are they going to be better? Yes. But is it enough to move the needle? I don't know. I don't know what that answer is going to be. Yeah, I'm just disappointed in what they did in the transfer portal, I guess, is really what I'm trying to say. I was hoping that LSU would do more, especially defensively, and I'm not impressed. I am simply not impressed. They did bring in a couple of other DBs, but I don't know if they're impact players, though. That's the thing. Guys that are gonna really, truly be a difference. I don't see it. I don't see it. So I got LSU as a loser because of that, among some other teams. But hey, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. Who do you think is not getting enough attention in a good way in the transfer portal? And who do you think is more down horrendous than what we have seen thus far and maybe is not being talked about enough? Definitely let me know down in that comment section. Definitely would appreciate if y'all had something to say about that.